Unknown Thought is made possible through the generosity of sponsors who care about people. IC Savings Bank, Ready Honda, and Corey's Clothiers. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unknown Thought. My guest this evening is I.J. Schechter, writer, and author of best-selling book. I'm delighted to be here with I.J. Schechter.
Thanks for having me.
I.J., everybody wants to know what I.J. stands for.
Well, I usually tell people it stands for Ingemar Johansson, just to make it more interesting of an answer. And I have a university roommate who still thinks it's Ingemar, even though I told him years ago it was Ian Jason, which is the truth. So he still calls me and says, Ingemar, how's it hanging? And I say, no, it's Ian Jason. Anyway, so it's Ian Jason.
Okay, so I.J., you've just written a best-selling book on golf. And I have to tell you that it's going gangbusters because everybody's a much worse golfer than they think they are, and they don't want to admit it.
That's true. Everybody cheats in golf is number one. Everybody wants to laugh in golf as an alternative to going crazy on the course, and there are a lot of golf instructional books out there and articles on how to break 90 and 80, but the fact is most people are trying to break 120, not 90 or 80. So there's room in the market for humor, and that's what I write humor about golf, because I'm a pretty lousy golfer myself. But I love the game, as many of us do. And in order not to go nuts on the course, I learned a long time ago, I would have to laugh at myself if I wasn't going to quit the game. So I found places to publish things, and eventually they wanted to collect them into a book. And it turns out that people like to read stuff that makes them laugh or perhaps reflects their own game. So I guess that's why it's been resonating with people, and I'm very pleased about it.
That's great. And I also detect that this is a part of a series where you've told people how to make money from writing, and you've chosen the subject which is likely to make money. We mentioned puppies and golf. You're a serious writer, though.
I'm a professional writer.
Yeah.
Yes,
but this is not serious work. This is funny, but there's other deeper work that you've written that I want you to tell me about.
Yeah, certainly. Much of the work is humor because I tend to see things from that kind of perspective. I'm a generally lighthearted person, and I see the humor in things, but I also write about things that are very dear to my heart and things I'm passionate about: parenting, pregnancy. I write about weddings from the groom's perspective. I write about my kids all the time. I write about social issues. Those are all very serious things, but I tend to come at them from a kind of optimistic, light perspective, and that's kind of my niche.
So we're the people of the book. We're familiar with text. We read all the time. Finding a great writer is not so easy. I've always argued the Torah is not the best written book on the planet, but you write really well. You're highly esteemed in the writing field. You've written for everybody, including great magazines that I will never, like Today's Parent, Maxim, and many others. What makes you a really good writer? You claim that everybody's looking for a great writer, but yet it's obviously not that easy to find. What makes you so good?
Well, it's kind of you to say, first of all.
My
Thank
opinion.
you for that. Yeah, that's a rumor. Well, I think the first thing you have to do is read a lot to be a writer. Any writer who asks me what to do, I say read, write, then read some more and write some more. You can take all the writing workshops you want or courses on grammar and syntax, but you need to read others and see what's out there and find your own voice eventually. There are a lot of cliches about how to develop your mode of expression as a writer or any kind of creative person, a musician, a sculptor, a painter, but the fact is that if you really have it inside you, I believe, you won't be able to repress it. Writing for me is like oxygen. It's a survival need. If I'm not writing, I'm typically not happy. Writing one good sentence gives me the kind of thrill that I don't get from anything else. My wife will come into my office sometimes and she'll know if I'm jazzed about what's happening or that I've just written something that I think is good, and she'll say, "You love this, don't you?" And I'll say, "Yeah," and she'll go, "That's gross," and walk out of the room because she doesn't like it. But you have to work at it all the time. You have to kind of find a voice that's yours. Everybody goes through derivative periods when they're trying to become an artist. I went through a Stephen King period and a Dave Barry period, and we all do that. But you have to be really ruthless with yourself until you hear a voice that is yours, and eventually other people will recognize that it's yours too, and then you have to hone that and really work at it. And it's not so much about finding ideas or thinking of things to write, because part of being a writer to me is being bombarded with ideas all the time. As you walk down the street, you get 10 ideas. It's more about being merciless with your own ideas and learning how to figure out what the good ideas are and how to develop them. You're going to have ideas all the time, whether you like it or not. It's about learning to edit yourself, be very mean about your own writing, not be married to it. When you put something down on paper, it becomes like a kid. You never want to get rid of any single word. But there's a really liberating, kind of exhilarating feeling that comes from being able to say, no good, great, at least I think so, and hopefully other people agree. It's a kind of a, I've resigned myself to the fact that I'll die 1,000 ideas behind, but that's okay. Hopefully I pick the 1,000 good ideas and leave the other ones aside.
What was that specific moment that you knew you were really good? What was that moment that happened that you said, I'm really a writer, I'm not just imagining I'm a writer? Was it somebody acknowledged you, or you discovered it within yourself, or you were able to convey something that was so deep that you never thought you'd be able to, but once you put it down in writing, it came alive? What was it?
There are a number of moments where people acknowledged the kind of writing that I did and complimented it, and that gave me encouragement to keep going. And of course, my parents encouraged me to cultivate the craft and such. But there was a moment in grade 13, I was taking an OAC English course, and we had been given a short story to read by a gentleman named Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who's a great short story writer. And in response to that, a story kind of came out of me, and it was literally a kind of mystical creative moment where I was just trying to catch up with the pen, and before I knew it, I get emotional talking about it because it was that kind of moment. And before I realized it, a story had just flooded out of me, a 12-page story. And a friend came over and read my chicken scratches and read it and said, this is publishable. This is what you were meant to do. And I said, yeah, I think that's true.
That's really amazing. You have children and you're married, and how has that changed you?
It's given me a lot more to write about because they change every day. There's so much rich material to write about when you are a parent. You could literally write different things day after day about their development and their evolution. They're the most fascinating creatures in the world, of course. You become a lot less interested suddenly in your own life and more interested in what they're doing. So there's that. In addition, my eldest son has become a prolific kind of creative producer of his own right. So, seeing the stuff that he writes in this very kind of pure, innocent, non-jaded way is wonderful and helps me see things in a new way too, because to him it's just letting it all come out, and they see things in such unusual, interesting, fun, sweet ways. So that's one way. And then of course it just adds so many layers and such a different dynamic to your life, that you have so much more that you feel and see, and you feel more love, you feel more joy, you feel more frustration, everything you feel more of. So there's much more to feel and write about and express.
Clearly you still believe that reading more rather than short little bits is important. What do you see as the future of reading, not just publishing or books, or reading in whatever form?
Well, there are two answers to that. I think reading short is as valuable as reading long. When I give courses to people who want to write, I start them off by reading haiku, which are 3 lines, and then graduating up to reading Gone with the Wind, because it's very important to be able to write economically. That teaches you discipline, it forces you into a structure and a mode. And in terms of the future of reading, I'm not concerned about it. If you're going to be any kind of creative professional, you need to adapt to what's happening. If I was alive when the printing press came out, I probably would have resisted it and said, this is a bastardization of the whole thing and I'm out of it, forget it, right? But technology moves ahead, things change, there are advances, you learn how to work with it, is my view. You don't go against it. So, is the internet going to kill reading? No, of course not. If you go on the subway any morning, you're still seeing people reading the newspaper and Metro and Grisham novels, etc., and you see them also on their iPads and their DS. But the two feed each other. It's a myth that one mode of reading kills the other mode. People will never stop reading.
It's been great having you, and to be a good speechwriter, I learned never to fall in love with a sentence, and I'm inspired to read your work, and really, it's a pleasure having you, and thank you for sharing your deep story with us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.